Welcome back, everybody, to the Pregame Network podcast, episode 8. Joined again by your gracious host, Dan, and his loyal companion, Anthony. Just two
Ahoy!
of us again tonight.
Yeah, Joe bailed
So,
again because he's a dick.
what a bitch. Um, a lot has happened this past week that warrants talking about, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, no, that's
So,
definitely true. It's so much that I've actually forgotten a decent amount. I lost my notes halfway through the week, so I lost a good chunk of that. So I'll lean on you to refresh my memory quite a bit on it, but that's when
okay.
we get into it.
Well, let's start off the way we always do. What have you
Mhm.
been playing this past week?
So, very interesting. I had two single player games take up a lot of my time. Obviously, I've been playing the usual fighting games, whatnot. I went back to one game which lost my interest the first time I played it, and I played a brand new game that you would never expect. So, the
Okay.
first one, the game I went back to was Prey, which
Yeah, I saw
back when
you playing that a lot on Xbox. I
yeah,
was genuinely surprised. Like
yeah, I
which
was
which
playing a
Prey? The
decent
one that
amount.
was made by Arcane?
Yes, the one that was played by Arcane.
Okay.
I have played the original Prey way back when. It's been. I'll probably play that soon too because it's been a while. But basically, when I first tried this Prey, the reboot, I had
Mm-hmm.
it didn't hold my interest, and it's not because of the genre. They call them immersive sims. That's kind of
Yeah.
another new age term. I'm not a huge fan of, but it's basically those kind of games that give you a shit ton of choice when it comes to what builds you can go in with. Everything kind of works. It's a matter of how you want to tackle it. Like I like Deus Ex, the old ones and the new ones. Bioshock kind of falls into that category too. Only it's less about the world and more about how you play. So that's a bit on the smaller side. But last time I played it, didn't hold my attention. This time, it's doing slightly better. I would say I'm about 65% done with it. It's starting to be taxing on me. I'm
Yeah.
kind of going at it with like a jack of all trades kind of build, which is probably the worst way to play these games, where I'm trying to do a little bit of stealth and a little bit of hacking and, a little bit of gunplay and a little bit. I want to try everything in it. I did reload a few saves to try stronger builds in one category. It's just not holding me. I don't know if it's the setting. It's not just the fact that I'm not a fan that it's wearing the Prey name, because I don't think it really fits that category, but it was kind of foisted on them, so whatever. And like I would say about halfway into me playing Prey, I'm like, let's take a look and see what's on Game Pass. And I found a game by the name of Little Kitty in the Big City, or Little Kitty Big City,
Oh gosh.
which is, the best way I can put it is, it's essentially Untitled Goose Game, but with like a cutesy cat instead, and the entire end game is one big
Like
Shadow of the
blatant
Colossus. No, so basically what it is it's kind of a rigid platformer where it's very clear a lot of effort made it a lot of effort went into you handling like a cat would, like the weighted movements and the
Okay.
jumps and shit like that. And it's not a blatant rip off, but it's got that kind of structure where it's like, okay, you don't have like traditional objectives, you have objectives that this little kitten would want to do or whatever. And
Right. Interesting.
fucking I 100% of that game. It's a
Oh
small
my
little
God.
thing. Yeah, I have no idea. It's a short game. It's not like a massive accomplishment or anything, but it sent me down a rabbit hole because I for some reason I'm sitting there going, something seems a bit off about this game. And I went on to Twitter and I'm just like, let's see what this developer has done. And he's just like, all he does is like on Twitter rant about all the social issues and whatnot. He was the guy. He was a former Valve dev that was complaining that
Interesting.
Valve wasn't diverse enough. Like
my
they had,
God.
and I'm just like, why? Everything. It's in fucking everything. Like I'm trying to play this game about a kitten trying to get back to his fucking home, and I go on Twitter and this guy, the dev, is just this fucking psychopath. But it was fine otherwise. It's just,
Well, but that obviously really soured your experience.
yeah, I almost didn't finish it because I'm just like, I don't want to give this guy more of my time. But there's a team around it that I didn't look into, so I was willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. The music was kind of nice, a little jazzy. Cute little game. Yeah. Held my attention more than Prey did, which is kind of sad, but
That's kind of wild, actually.
yeah.
I played Prey for a little while. I got like a few missions deep, and I just it wasn't really for me. I don't think the immersive sim genre on like as a whole is really my speed,
Well,
but that's okay.
the two things I'll say about it is like I said,
I
I
never
had a
played and
similar.
finished Dishonored.
Well, what I'll say is I had a similar experience with Prey. I think it's a mixture of the pacing and the level design that just there's something wrong with it. I also think the combat scaling and the difficulty scaling, it's not like hard, it's just stupid sometimes where it's just like if you're not
Hey,
fully kitted out in one way, you'll just eat shit and die. As like a little experiment, I lowered the difficulty to story and it didn't even like fix it. Like it just made it so that I wasn't dying as much. It didn't make it like easy. Like you were still the fights were grueling and stupid,
huh.
and it just like I guess it made stealth easier, and stealth is a way that you could play those games. But I wouldn't rule out the whole thing just because, like I said, Prey it didn't work for me. It didn't work for you. It's possible there's other genres like you were enjoying
Well, I
System
mean,
Shock.
it's like
System Shock's another one of
universally.
those.
Yeah, no, I know. I was enjoying System Shock. I can't really put my finger onto why it just vibed with me in like the time that I was playing it, but
Mm-hmm.
I think Helldivers might have come out like while I was in the middle of that. Something came out and I kind of abandoned it, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hate System Shock and I wanted to play it because I know it was like a reimagining of the original one.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever because like BioShock was based on System Shock, right? That's kind of how it
It's a
went.
spiritual successor.
Right, exactly. So I wanted to at least play something in that uh, realm, but
Yeah.
I didn't not like System
It's
Shock,
just one of
but
those
I did get to
games
a
that got away from you.
yeah, exactly. I got to like the third level or something, like in the space station, and I feel like the difficulty curve just cranked up immensely, and then something came out, and I went to that, and that was kind of the
Mm.
end of it.
Yeah.
So super. What was that game called? Uh, the cat one.
The one that I was playing,
Yeah,
Little Kitty Big City.
Little Kitty Big.
Yeah.
Little
Now
Kitty
on
Big
Game
City
Pass,
and
you can go
Prey.
play it. Yeah, that's
So that's what you've been playing. Good to
yeah.
know.
Aside from fighting games, and
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
I'm,
aside
I'm
from
kind of
like
on
the
a
norm.
roll with that. So I'm trying to beat more games. So as soon as I'm
Ah,
done with Prey, I'm gonna queue up two other games and see if I can get through
cool.
those. I was gonna do a video on Prey. I don't think it's not holding my attention enough, and I don't want to force it. But we'll see what happens.
hmm As far as I am concerned, I've actually been playing the finals lately to the point where like it actually kind of grabbed me because
Hmm.
you know what it is, right? I don't do I have to explain it.
I have very vague info. Treat it to me like I've never heard it before. Explain
All
it.
right, so the finals it was made by a bunch of former Battlefield devs, like
Hmm.
the devs that were responsible for like Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3 and 4, like the golden age of
Hmm.
Battlefield, as it were. They left. They made a new studio called Embark, and the first game they put out was the finals. It's free to play. It has all of like the shitty tropes of a free to play model, as I'm sure you are
Mm.
also acutely aware of, battle
I am
pass, bunch of
familiar.
microtransactions, cosmetics, blah blah blah. Some of the cosmetics are actually pretty cool. Most of them are not my style, but that's has nothing to do with the gameplay. But so the whole gimmick of the finals, or its shtick, is that it's iterating on the destructible environments that made Battlefield famous in the first place,
Yeah.
to the point where like the game runs off of the server side of things. It does not run on the client, which is really cool because it
Mm.
kind of changes the way that a multiplayer game is going to run for all players in the match. That way,
Mm.
like everybody sees the same thing, no, because the one truth of like the data packets is coming from the data center. It's not coming
Mhm.
from the individual host, or doesn't have to be load balancing or anything like that among the different players. It's all done on the server backend, which is really cool. The destruction in in the finals is actually second to none. Like I don't think any game has destruction, at least today, that in the
Really?
same way that this game does. And I know that kind of tickles your pickle.
Yeah,
I'm
just a smidge.
pitching it this way for a reason, but uh, so I've been playing the finals a lot lately. I think
Okay.
that they could use it. It could definitely use some love in like the weapons department. It actually has. a decent amount of gadgets and different like equipment to use, which is always good. But I think it could use more guns overall. I know that it's still
Mm.
getting support. It's still being developed, and that will come. Like I'm not really that concerned about that. But the maps are huge, and there is a big emphasis on movement. There are jump pads everywhere. There are zip lines everywhere. You can just smash a wall open and go through. It's really really cool. Now the thing that grabbed me, so I put 12 hours into it so far.
Oh.
When I first tried it, when the game first came out, I'm like, oh, this is cool, but I keep on getting snuffed. Like I'm just maybe I was playing too much Destiny at the time. I wasn't used to like a different
Mm.
shooter. Um, so I kind of put it down for a little bit. That was like about 6 hours worth of playtime, like that first stint. I went back to it like a few days ago, and I picked it up, and I got hooked. I don't know. I actually no, I do know what it was. They added a new game mode, which I know you're going to fucking love. So hear
Oh
me out
boy.
on this. They added a new game mode that came out with season two. I don't know when season two launched, but it was new with season two.
Mhm.
Basically, it's like hold the point, right? Like you're familiar with hardpoint from COD, right? Hold the point and you get points towards
Mm.
your score.
Like a domination
This
kind of
game
thing.
mode is called Power Shift, right?
Okay.
There's a big platform in the middle of the map, and it's like a symmetrical distance away from both teams. Both teams spawn in, and you have to get to the platform, and whoever gets to it first, it'll start moving in the direction of the enemy spawn, right? Now,
Mm.
the difference here is that the platform is about the size of like a medium-sized boat, I would say, okay? And
Okay.
you could see the trajectory of the platform. Like there's like a hologram path around the map that you can see where it's
Mhm.
going, but it goes through buildings. It just fucking bulldozes its way through like giant skyscraper buildings, and everything comes down around you in the
God
middle of you
damn.
fighting for the point. And just it's fucking chaos, but in the best way. It's so much fun.
That sounds
And
like a hoot.
it's a lot of fun. I think you'd really like it. I started playing this. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. Like one match goes by, started playing a second match. Okay, this is a lot of fun. I started getting the hang of like the mechanics and the feel for the game. And then like
Yeah.
once the third match rolled around, I'm like, this is fucking awesome. I'm in. Like this is a lot of fun. And the gun that sold me was they have like the model 1887, the shotgun, right? But it's
Okay.
not like you can only use it up close. It's like a really really tight pellet spread, like almost to the point where it's like a slug round, but you can hit people like 50 meters off, like and kill them like with reliability. Um, so that's what I've been playing lately, and I've honestly been loving it. I mean, there are some matches where like I'm pretty sure I was matched with a cheater last night because I it's free to play, so there's no barrier to entry, and so you get all these like undesirable players. But he was using this pistol. I'm like, what the fuck gun is he using? He kept on just murking me with this thing. So I took note of the gun. In between rounds, I unlocked it, and I went like I jumped back in and played. It was good, but it wasn't to the point where this guy was like the speed at which this dude was killing me. So I think something fishy was going on there. But anyway, I've been playing the
Mm.
finals, and been having a lot of fun with it. That new game mode that just like the platform will just fucking tear through a building,
Sounds like
and
a good time.
it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So I've been having a good time with you. You should come play with us. It's really good,
I
and it's
mean,
free. So just
I parsed it through the bizarre messaging where that one GIF,
yeah, the
and
gifs are
then
weird.
he just pointed at it. And I'm like, all right, even though that's not proper human communication, I'll take the fucking hint. So I did download the game. The call just never came
Oh,
through.
beautiful.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
guess
so
I'll be
we should
sampling that.
definitely play that. It's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the gun mechanics take a little bit to get used to. The time to kill is way higher than COD. But once you get the hang of it, the one thing that does really fucking bug me is you don't have a secondary weapon. Like I'll empty my magazine and then I'll go to
Mm.
instinctively switch, and there's just nothing there, and I end up dying. But that's neither here nor there. So that's what I've been playing.
Sounds like a
Um,
lot of fun.
yeah, so it's a good time. It's a good time. So do you have so transitioning from what we've been playing to news. Do you have something you'd like to start off with? Because I mean, there's a quick thing that I want to touch on that it's
Well,
not huge, but I just feel like it's worth mentioning.
I'll follow your lead today, just because like I said, I lost a lot of my notes. The one thing, the
Hmm.
two things I have on here, one's kind of like supplementary, and the other one is like a last minute kind of musing thing. So I'll just follow you, and I'll interject where we're able.
Okay. Well, I mean, the first thing that I wanted to touch on that it's not like huge news by any stretch of the imagination, but
Mm-hmm.
Tripwire put out a 15-year, I think it's, yeah, 15-year anniversary video for Killing Floor, like
Mm-hmm.
as an IP.
Mm-hmm.
And it just like it's one of those videos where, interviewing a bunch of the developers and like showing really small snippets of gameplay from Killing Floor 3, like sprinkled
Okay.
throughout the video, like, couple seconds here or there. But the couple seconds that were shown was, I mean, it looks great. It looks really, really cool. It looks so like the first game was very dark, very gritty. Everything was there's like almost no map where it's like either daylight or it's brightly lit or whatever. It
Yeah,
was all like,
yeah, I remember a lot of Killing Floor 1, because I always thought it
yeah,
was
we
like,
played some of it.
yeah, I always saw it as like this weird like offshoot, because it was a mod of something. I'm pretty
Yes, it
sure.
was a mod of Half-Life, I think. I could be
Half
wrong on
Life or
Half-Life, but
Counter
it was a
Strike, it's hard to tell, because
yeah,
that era of Gold Source is very very similar. Like I'm pretty sure it was
yeah.
like Half Life gameplay, but it had like the buying system of Counter Strike or something like that. I forget the exact how it broke
Yeah, the
down.
whole trading post thing, like that's taken almost directly out of Counter Strike.
Yeah,
But it was a mod of something. It started off as like a linear single player. I feel like story is too heavy a word to use because like you just have to make it from point A to point B,
mm-hmm.
tearing through Zeds like in between those 2 points. Um,
Yeah,
then it eventually evolved to become this co-op horror survival shooter, and like
yeah.
not survival horror the same way that like Resident Evil is. Like you're gonna have plenty of ammo.
Yeah, but it's
um
like a survival experience with horror elements.
yeah, yeah, so the
Yeah,
first game was
wave
like
based, wave
really,
based.
yes, wave based. The first game was really deep into the horror genre, and then the second
Yeah,
game it's still there but it's not as intense. So like the stuff that they showed off in the anniversary video is it looks like it's getting back to that first game, really dark, really gritty. Everything is very dimly lit because the Zeds, all their character models are fucking terrifying. They really are. And
yeah,
all of the enemy promotional videos that they've shown so far um, they're all returning Zeds. I'm sure there'll be new ones, but they're all returning Zeds from the promotional videos. But they all look fucking horrifying, and that's exactly as a Killing Floor fan, that's exactly what I want.
yeah. I would
So
say that that
I'm
was one of
excited.
the most. Yeah, that was probably when we did play Killing Floor 2, when you got it for me, and we had that period of time where we played it. It's
Yeah,
actually some of our earliest free plays on the channel are Killing Floor,
yeah.
and we enjoyed it. It was good, but something I noticed back then, I don't know if I mentioned it, is I remember seeing Killing Floor 1 and playing a very little bit of it, and I remember, it wasn't a terrifying game. It scared me when I was younger, but
Yeah.
it definitely had like a darker tonal balance. Like it was
Oh,
definitely had a
very much
darker
so.
tone
Yeah.
than. So I would say that's a step in the right direction for Killing Floor 3. I would say it needs to be like, Doom and Doom Eternal and Doom 3. I would say Doom
Hmm.
3 is a good, like, it needs to be at Doom three's level or scarier, I would say.
Yeah, I
Not
would agree
not
with
not
that
that I need
exactly.
when I say scarier, I
Doom
don't need to
Eternal
be
was not
frightening, but it
scary.
needs to be, no, but I mean, like, if you follow the train from Eternal back to 2016 and then back again to Doom 3, like, you'll kind of
Hmm.
see like it's scaling back into more horror-esque. Doom 3, a lot of people consider just like a horror game because of how drastically
Yeah.
different it is from 2 and the games that followed. So at Doom three's level or darker is probably a good
Yes.
step, and that's kind of what you're
Yeah.
describing to me.
Agreed. Yeah. One other thing before I'm done with this topic
Yeah.
is it was like a 15-minute video, but like all the devs they were interviewing, most of them, like the vast majority of devs that were on this video, have been with the Killing Floor um, game, like IP, since the very beginning. Like they
Mm,
were there when it was like 10 guys developing this mod, and they knew what they wanted it to be. And that I'm honestly really glad that it's that all those guys still stayed there, because those are the people who originally had the vision for what they wanted this game to be.
Mm-hmm.
And in a world, in a gaming industry where that's just not the fucking case anymore, where like, Rocksteady is not Rocksteady that we knew, like growing up with the
Yeah.
Arkham games. It's not the same studio. Infinity Ward is not the same studio. Fucking Dice
Yeah.
is not the same. Like all these studios are just
It's
they're only the same in name. So it's not
yeah.
it's not the same
It's
thing.
definitely that's I would say that's more a reassurance in this kind of double A
Yeah.
area, because a
Double
lot
A
of the
has been fucking
times,
killing it lately.
yeah, because what I'll say is this is like it is a reassuring thing to say like, oh, you have the same team, but like when you're in a larger studio, right, that's still, it's like you can still like trip these people up. Like the studio almost acts like an anchor to them,
Hmm.
and you also have to rely on them being like the same people they were. Like a lot of people, like, to look at multiple mediums, so to speak. It's like you have something like in TV right now. It's like Doctor Who. You brought back like one of the best writers and showrunners the series ever had, and then he's just a nut job now, and everything fucking sucks. And you have over in video games, you have Guilty Gear, the guy, the creator, the guy who led the project for 25 years. He lost his fucking mind, and the series kind of like went in a bad direction. It's a reassurance, even if it's not a guarantee. And I think it's better in like these smaller groups, not when there's like something looming above them,
Right.
or a very corporate growing focus.
Like I know that Tripwire is much bigger now. They have a lot of games under their belt at this time,
Mm-hmm.
but like one of the devs said, I think he put it very well, was Tripwire is the house that Killing Floor built. And that
Yeah.
was
Okay.
perfect, because that was, you could tell throughout their other games like Red Orchestra 1 and 2, that was
Mm-hmm.
Tripwire.
Oh, I
Um,
didn't know that.
you could tell of like the shooter DNA, like those gunplay mechanics in those games. You could feel it all the way back in Killing Floor 1. And not
Okay.
to mention, uh, as far as like guns feel in games, Killing Floor is like right up there with the heavy hitters. It's a
Yeah.
double A game. It's a kind of an indie. I don't know. I don't know who it's published by. It's definitely more of like an indie title. Does not have a lot of people following it. It's definitely more of a cult
Mm-hmm.
game, but
Yeah.
you could tell these guys have been working in this engine for years. The guns feel fucking great. The recoil feels great. The variety of weapons, it's all there. Everything has its own identity. It's a really good feeling game, and I think it's going to carry over into Killing Floor 3.
I would hope so. I guess
Yeah.
my only two curiosities going into it is just because of obviously how Killing Floor 2 went with the microtransactions. I wonder, have they commented at all about how they're going to be handling that going into Killing Floor 3?
Not in that video.
Okay.
I don't know. They didn't say
They've talked
anything
about it
about
at
the
all.
microtransactions.
Okay. That's fair.
Not that I could tell.
Okay.
But it was so fucking confusing in Killing Floor 2. Like they have to do something.
Yeah,
But
it
I
not
don't know.
only
We'll
was it
see.
confusing, it was all like kind of a post-launch kind of thing. So
Yeah.
hopefully it's not indicative of what their philosophy is going forward, but more like some missteps they made post-launch. So
Right.
we'll see about that. And the only other thing I'm curious is, like, we talked about it all the time. You mentioned the gunplay, second to none. I remember like we were just like, I think we actually talked about this on one of something that we did back in the day, whether it was the podcast, one of the last episodes of the podcast or not. But we talked about how Killing Floor 2 had those reload animations that were extremely high in
Right.
frames.
Yeah. They were rendered at a higher frame rate and resolution than the rest of the gameplay. So like
Mm-hmm.
when you entered Z time after getting a precision kill or something, you could literally see like the barrel of the gun shake. Like there are different things on the weapon that moved around after firing off a shot. It was just fucking cool. Like
Yeah, so
they didn't have to
take
do
some
that.
of that. Yeah, hopefully they take some of that like polish and care and put that into like not just the guns but more in the game itself. If
Yeah.
that attention to detail and that like enthusiasm for different aspects of the game has only grown and grown more experience, and if they realize the missteps of some of the things they did with later Killing Floor 2, then we should be in for a good time. But I guess we'll see more as we get closer to knowing more about the release and what it's going to come with, because it's either going to be a great time or it's going to be like a Payday 3 situation,
Right. Oh
where
God,
they
Payday 3.
learned nothing and it was just like and only did more nasty shit, and what a shit show that was. But that's a different can of worms.
All right, so moving on from there, I have like two different things that are related to like the shooter genre, and then another thing that's not entirely. So, I mean, do you have something that you want to talk about before we move on, or should I just bring us into the next topic?
Just bring us into the next one.
All right. So the screenshot that you posted on the news channel, I think is definitely worth talking about. How I don't think this was a surprise to anybody, but Microsoft is going to be putting COD on Game Pass day one. Like, I think that's
those
huge.
are the early reports. That is huge. And there's a few reasons it's huge. Is because once again, when we've been talking about Call of Duty in the last couple, we've been kind of dour about it, to the point where I don't think either of us were enthused or interested in whatever the next Call of Duty was going to be.
It depends on the setting for me, at least right now.
Yeah, it's just, but like going into it, like enthusiasm was low, we'd say, right? So now, like that's like, say what you will about profits, but the install base of Call of Duty on the Xbox is going to be bigger than it has been in a long time, I think.
Well, I mean, this is not going to hurt. Microsoft putting COD on Game Pass is going to be massive. It's just going to be like basically no barrier to entry to millions of people.
Yeah, and I think they were skittish about it for a while because obviously then you pass up you pass up like that the raw profits from owning it now. But like I think it's just Xbox is in such a interestingly bad spot lately.
Yeah.
They need, like, I don't know, like I talked about this a while ago, how their strategy, like I get why they're not aggressively pursuing exclusives, but they just don't have the content to do that. And if you're not going to take, if you're not going to be the biggest scumbag on the planet, and if your concession in court was to say like Call of Duty won't be exclusive, this is the next best thing. You got to play to your strengths. Get the money from the PlayStation sales, and then freaking just like you gotta foster your base. And I think the only reason that they went from like skittish around it to a slam dunk is because of their Game Pass goals, which they're falling short of. Like they want, what was it, 100 million subscribers by 2030, and I think they're at like 30 million. Like they're losing steam between between losing certain exclusives from Game Pass, lack of faith in Xbox Game Studios, and the post-pandemic bubble bursting, so to speak. So this, I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm glad their hands are kind of tied where they got to do this. And I have a feeling, with this kind of news, that if they are doing that for certain, where like we end up like the next Xbox event, that's going to be followed by a Call of Duty event, one of those two events ends with day one on Game Pass, I have a feeling we're also going to hear about older Call of Duties also coming to Game Pass, and I think that's going to be one of their... I fucking hope so. I think that's going to be... I think it's a strong possibility, and it's definitely, even if they don't do it, it would be one of the smarter strategies to kind of come out swinging in an era where, like, a lot of their games are falling short, they're closing studios, where, like, it's just giving them a bad rep. They need a win, and they need to start leveraging. They just spent $80 billion on this. They need to start leveraging it somewhat. If you're not going to take it fully exclusive, or if you conceded that you cannot do that in court, you need to leverage it at least a little bit, because the strategy ain't working. It will Spencer be kind of funny.
Cut a check.
Yeah. No, what I'll say is I think it will be pretty funny if their headlines after the event are Call of Duty and Gear 6 and not Halo and Gear 6. That would be fucking funny to see. But aside from that, I think we're not going to see
a Halo for many years to come, I think.
Listen, I'm fine with that. Infinite, like I said last time, you can't just like rush into another Halo after barely fixing Infinite. Just let Infinite simmer, build up goodwill there, make
The
it a
problem
better
with
game,
Halo is that it
and
was
go
just
from
too
there.
little. Too it was it was a good amount of updates and content, but it was way too late. Like nobody cares
Yeah, it's
anymore.
if you very few people watch the news hole, but it's funny whenever I would bring up Halo news in the news hole, I would always like make the joke as like players are finally excited to see some goddamn content because it's like they would just go quiet for months on end and then they'd add like one map or like
Yeah.
they'd tweak a gun and it took them years to get to this point. So
It's
that's
crazy.
where
It's
yeah.
absolutely it's insane. I would be absolutely shocked if we didn't hear about some form of uh uh job cuts or layoffs coming to 343. Like at
It
this
was.
point,
I mean,
I
I
think that Phil
we need to
Spencer
go
cut a check
back.
for $80 billion and it's time to make good on that promise to Microsoft
Yeah,
and the investors.
I
And
do.
you don't have any exclusives. You don't have any like content to speak of. Nothing that's going to make a dent in that amount of money. So
Mhm.
like the only thing you can turn to are job cuts and layoffs and studio closures. So I also think that the reason why Arcane Austin and Tango GameWorks got closed was because when Microsoft bought ZeniMax, I think they were just buying everything solely to get COD and like Fallout and just the big guns. That's it.
You mean
I
like
think
Fallout and
everything
Elder
else,
Scrolls? Because COD
yeah, I
is
think
not
everything
there.
else was water under the bridge. So now when push comes to shove and we need something to show for this 80 billion fucking dollars that we just spent, um like t- uh, th- Hi-Fi Rush was never ever going to make a difference as far as the cost to debt ratio. Like it was never gonna
Yeah, no,
like the game was
so
great, yeah, it won
yeah,
awards. It was never gonna matter anyway.
so a few things. Just to comment on the Tango GameWorks. I kind of said my piece on it last time, but what I will
Hmm.
say is while I'm not like in that camp that said like, oh, Tango was an amazing studio with a flourishing future. I do think one I will say is that when Hi-Fi Rush's initial launch was all said and done, you had a I forget which representative it was from Xbox said it exceeded all of our expectations.
Yeah, yep.
So as far so I'm not
Well,
that
that was
doesn't
the
mean it
tweet
made
that was
millions.
thrown around
Yeah, that
after
was one of the tweets.
the closures.
What I will say is this: I personally, while I do not think that Tango was going to turn into like some every other year comes an amazing new like it is the reason that people are so miffed is because of its reputation from Hi-Fi Rush. They don't really give a shit about like why the studio was actually founded and all that. They're just like, oh, Hi-Fi Rush is this quirky game. It was shadow dropped. It blew everybody away when it came out, even though it was just like a
Right.
mid-range action game because it's something that the brand didn't have. I take more issue with how Microsoft handled Hi-Fi Rush than I do how they handled the studio. Because if I was Microsoft, I would have held on to Hi-Fi Rush like nothing. Like you hold on to that and you keep that exclusive. Like
Right.
I wouldn't have conceded. Like I mentioned when we talked about the Xbox stuff, I'm just like, oh, if you had to concede, give it. If you had to push out exclusives to other platforms to kind of scrape more from the bottom of the barrel, you would put out Hi-Fi Rush. You shouldn't have that strategy with like that kind of game though. I would say if you have breakout hits like that from studios you own, like that's the kind of stuff you wanted to happen when you bought all these studios, is to kind of have like occasionally just like a spark like a Hi-Fi Rush. I'm not going to turn around and say it was amazing. It's not like a breakout hit like a Halo or something like that, but it's something that they should have held on to a bit better as far as an exclusive standpoint. But
Yeah.
the other side of that is Japanese goodwill because it was a Japanese studio, and I already remarked the last time how miserable their experience in Japan has always been. Like they just keep dropping the ball. Like I don't know. Like I still agree that it's better from a business sense to have closed them down, but I don't know if it wasn't the right move in nearly every other
Well, from
metric.
dollars and cents, yeah, of course, it was
Yeah,
definitely uh,
yeah.
uh, that was the financial move to make. Like it sucks that people lost their jobs, but again, you buying up ZeniMax for 80 billion. Like I can't stress this enough. Like Microsoft
How much
spent.
did they wait? How much did they pay for ZeniMax? Because it wasn't 80
It
billion.
was
80
80 billion.
billion
It was like
no, it wasn't.
79.6
No,
billion
that's
dollars.
Activision. You're confusing the two. and that was before the Activision buyout, and it was for a much lower amount of money. They didn't pay 80 billion for ZeniMax and Bethesda. You got to look that up because they paid 80 billion for Activision Blizzard King. That's what they spent the 80 billion dollars on. And
so it was the Microsoft,
Microsoft Bethesda
ZeniMax, Microsoft ZeniMax cost, right? It was 7.5 billion.
7.5 billion. Yeah, it was expensive, don't get me wrong. It was probably their second most expensive acquisition, but 80 billion was the Activision deal.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I'm confusing the two.
No, it's easy because they bought so many fucking studios.
Yeah.
But
my point still stands. Like, I think that they scooped up these studios. Yeah. Because you don't spend that amount of money and not make like Elder Scrolls, Doom, COD, whatever you can exclusive. You know, Xbox has next to nothing right now.
I think we're gonna find out. You know, when we've talked about exclusive, we talked about the strategy. I think we're gonna find out in the long run that, like, that the leads at Xbox are actively fighting both to get their studios going, because we talked about all the shit that goes on in the AAA studios to actually get them going. And I think them fighting with their studios adds to the issues that the studios are already going through with, like, all the nonsense in the industry, like brain drain and initiatives and stuff that make games suck. And then at the same time, I think the heads at Xbox are fighting the upper management in Microsoft. I think Microsoft is trying to leverage Game Pass to kind of push Xbox into a software brand, because Microsoft forever has always made money off of software, and I think that's how the guys at the very top are viewing this. So if you have studios that are already struggling, and then they struggle more because you're micromanaging them, and then the people doing the micromanaging are basically tied back by the guys at the top that want expectations without understanding the brand. It's a recipe for disaster. They really need to wow at this event coming up. Otherwise, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying it's like a done deal if they fuck up there, but they need a win, because if you have your bosses above you saying like things about like your job, and at the same time you have no support in your consumer base, like that's a losing battle. It's just a matter of how long you fight it. But I don't know. It's like, you gotta understand, Microsoft, and this is both like a foreboding thing, but also like kind of a light at the end of the tunnel thing. Microsoft has botched so many deals so many deals and so many opportunities, and like as long as the Xbox has been around, like original Xbox, right? You know, the guys from Rockstar said, "Hey, we want to make we're going to take Grand Theft Auto to 3D. We're going to bring it to 3D for the first time, and we want to have it on Xbox platforms." And the guy said, "I don't think GTA would work in 3D. I don't think they're going to make the jump to 2D." So they missed Grand Theft Auto 3. That could have been an Xbox exclusive. At the time, a bit later, Mikami, he was sick and tired of Sony, and he was fishing for other people. So Mikami goes to meet with the Microsoft guy, and he asks a question about basically what's their resolve, how do they view games? And now the head of Xbox at the time would have said like, "Oh, we view games as a legitimate art form, and we think that, you know, that we got to take the medium seriously, and we got to treat it with respect." Unfortunately, the guy doing the interpreting for Mikami didn't know how to answer that question, so Mikami walked, and they lost Resident Evil 4. Flash forward later, you have Genshin Impact. The guys that did Genshin Impact were just talking to developers. They apparently went to Microsoft first, or at the same time as they went to Sony, and Microsoft passed. And then it's not on Xbox consoles, it's on every other console, or maybe it's just on Sony consoles, but they lost out on that. And ever since then, they've said, we want our own Genshin Impact, which they still haven't made. Go even further. Marvel Games went to Xbox and Sony. Who wants to make Spider-Man games? Who wants to make these Marvel games? They passed there too. They go to Sony. Baldur's Gate 3.
I didn't know that they went to Xbox for Spider-Man.
No, yeah, they did. Marvel Games in general was fishing around like for like who are they going to do deals with, because at a certain, like, they were partnered with a few people, Capcom being one of them, but there was a shift when Disney had full control over Marvel. That's a whole other story. But the most recent one I can think of, aside from their closures, is Baldur's Gate 3, because obviously Microsoft has that parity thing between Xbox Series X and Series S. And
yes.
split screen co-op did not function on the Microsoft on Xbox Series S. So Baldur's Gate 3 was not available on Xbox for a long time before they finally caved and said, okay, the Series X will have the exclusive split screen mode, but it won't have it on the Series S. So they were late to the party with Baldur's Gate 3. And that's just a handful of things. They've missed out on so many opportunities between just bad timing, wrong place, wrong time, bad decisions from the top. And then now that they're in the position where they've literally just bought people, where like even if they wanted to miss out on these exclusives, they couldn't. The games just aren't being made. And here's the thing. I do blame a lot of it on micromanagement and like the different layers of power fighting with each other, but a lot of that is just bad circumstance. They bought a lot of these studios in one of the worst times for AAA studios. I'm not going to harp on it again because I spent at least 3 episodes bitching about all the industry-wide issues. I'm not going to go through them again, but you know what they are, and it's just a bad time for AAA studios. So,
True.
and
True.
as much as I'm sure they're making money on siphoning off their back catalog to PC and Sony, I don't think that's a good place for their reputation at the moment. So that's my take.
Definitely not. No, Xbox has never been in a worse place, in my opinion.
Xbox One launch.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 2, I guess. Well, okay, so I think the Xbox One launch was kind of the beginning of the falling of the dominoes, so to speak.
They haven't
because they
recovered from
really have not recovered from it.
Yeah.
They really haven't. And like the very next day, like, you know, during that E3 when Sony had their press conference for the PS4, was it? Yeah. They're like, this is how you share games, and he just hands the fucking box to the guy standing next to him, like the biggest dunk on another company that could have possibly have happened.
Yeah, they still haven't recovered from that. It's a little insane. There's a lot to say about that. I think one of the saddest things about that is people talk about, you know, oh, consoles are on their way out, it's going to be all PC gaming in the future. I think that the Xbox One had a lot of features and they were kind of gearing up, you know, because obviously during that opening event they talked a lot about TV, and that's the meme that everybody hates. Yeah. Games should always be first and foremost for the console, but a lot of the stuff that's built into the Xbox One was ahead of its time as a media center, and I think that that's something consoles should
completely
leverage.
Agree with that. Yeah. And like, it's crazy that if they maybe had delivered it a different way, it like the Xbox One would have been enormous. Like a console that plugs into your entertainment center and like everything runs through it. Fucking DVD player, game system, fucking live television that you just press a button on an app on the dashboard and live TV comes up. Like, that is honestly really smart. It is. But they didn't pitch it right. And,
I guarantee you right now, if they had all the features that they did, but they had a stronger launch lineup, they never had the always online, and they never had the game sharing problem, it would have done phenomenally, and a lot of those features that were in the Xbox One would have been evolved on or would have been improved on in like whatever the Series X would have become. Now, I mean, like, because when you look at the Series X, it's not a bad machine by any rights, and it has a lot of its ideas in the right places. Like, you boot it up immediately, you have the back catalog of Xbox is right in front of you. It's a powerful machine. It's got quick resume. It's got an amazing feature set, but
quick resume sucks ass. Okay, I'm gonna say it.
What did you say?
Quick resume sucks ass, especially for online games.
It sucks for like Call of Duty and like nothing else. It works fine for like I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna argue personal experience because I think we have different game sets, but it works pretty phenomenally with everything I've played that isn't a Call of Duty. Like literally the only time what I'll say is this: the only time I have an issue with quick resume is if I quick resume into an online lobby. That's really it.
No, see, I've always had a problem quick resuming onto a game that requires an online connection. I've had to force close it and then restart every time.
I mean, I don't know. But that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe it's like on like I jumped between Gears 5, Gears 4, and Gears 2, all of which have online connectivity, and like the worst I got is like, oh, disconnected, going to main menu, and then I click A twice and I'm there. But if I'm in like a campaign or something like that, like I just don't have the issue. The only time I have had issues is with mainline Call of Duty games. Those are the only games that have given me issues so far.
Like, fair. I
my
don't know. That's
my
my
Xbox,
experience.
my Xbox is off right now. If I turn it on, my play session of both Little Kitty in the Big City and Prey are both there waiting for me. But no, so what? But basically, to not get too far off track, I do think that the reception to the Xbox One stunted a lot of important features that I don't know if we're like, but between the uncertainty in the industry and the focus of currently of gamers and all that kind of stuff, I don't think we're going to revisit a lot of that, and it sucks. Mm-hmm. It does suck. There was as much. The Xbox One was much better off without the online requirement. There were certain features, like the negative result was not being able to share your games traditionally, but there was a feature built in somewhere where like if you played by all the rules, you got something really neat. Like I forget exactly how it broke down, but I think it was like easier access to your games, even if it was like extremely stringent and like the negatives were not worth the pros, the cons were not worth the pros, whatever. There was something in there that was neat that they just executed very poorly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's to go back to what you said, they never recovered from that, and it not only hurt the brand in a severe way that they're still paying for, but it also stunted console growth. So we'll see what happens in the future.
I don't know. I think that if they don't show up with Gear 6 at this new event, like COD is kind of all but guaranteed. If they don't show up with Gear 6 or some other giant Xbox exclusive, like not that it's going to be like the final nail in the coffin or anything, but they just need an exclusive just to be able to compete at this point. It's crazy.
Imagine, I mean, I'll be honest, if the only promising thing they show is Call of Duty Black Ops Gulf 4 as a day one Game Pass thing, if that's like their only big thing, they break even. That's like they have, it's such a strong ace in the hole. I do think all the rumors point to seeing, all the rumors say that they're gearing up for Gear 6, but I mean I don't know. I don't want to hype myself up, but I think
how long ago was the Gears 5 launch? I'm googling it.
It was a while.
Yeah,
because Gears
more than 5 years.
Yeah. Gears 6 was near the beginning of the series.
2019.
Okay.
September 10th, 2019. So it was 5 years.
Yeah.
So there was like almost a 10-year gap between Halo 5 and Infinite.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just if you have a really solid version of the game, like there's no need to constantly make it. Like I'm of the idea that optimal, how games used to be made, where it's just like you made a really good game and people really loved it and you were able to make a sequel in a reasonable amount of time. That's an amazing breakout good sequel with decent support throughout a console lifetime. I personally don't want to go lower than 2 games of a series per console for really big series, because these console generations should last a while. But I'll settle for one.
They're kind of getting shorter and shorter, I feel like.
No, because
weren't there rumors floating around of like the next PlayStation and the next Xbox?
I think we're gonna hear about it probably the end of winter of next year.
This is why I think I'm really leaning heavily on just going PC.
My whole thing with that position is that's not a bad position. I like you wanting to go full PC gaming. There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, I've kind of taken that plunge already.
Well, here's the thing. Consoles should be fighting for dear life for your attention. They should be incentivizing consoles. Not necessarily to split the market, but like that should be their incentive. They should be saying like, hey, we want to have such an amazing good experience with a handful of good exclusives that like you are compelled, or like it's a tough decision for you,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like that's the place we want to be. Like I don't want it arbitrarily to split the market. Like, ooh, I want my traditional games in a box in front of the TV. It's a healthy market has good competing consoles, and it's just we're far away from that right now.
Yeah, I mean, everything that I want to play is available on PC in some way or another. So, just based off of that metric alone, like I have to wait a little bit longer to play it. Like Ghost of
Mm,
Tsushima just launched, and apparently it's like a really well optimized port, and the game itself was very good. Have not played it yet. Like I'm planning on buying it on PC, but I had to wait longer than if I would have had PS5. But at least I could play it like on the console of my choice, on the platform of my choice being Steam. So I there really isn't a giant reason for me to really take the leap from one console or another. I bought the Series X because I've been an Xbox gamer for forever, really. Uh, and I was planning on buying the PS5 for the exclusives because like I just said, I wanted to play Ghost of Tsushima, and I love God of War, and that apparently is coming out soon on PC also. So I really don't have to buy a PS5. But
mm,
Microsoft also gives you no reason to buy their console over
mm,
Game Pass on PC. So
yeah.
what am I doing here?
No, yeah, it's definitely been pushed to that direction. Like for example, I personally like unless like the experience is just terrible or short of some like hard reboot to the ecosystem, like I can't see myself going full PC gaming. PC gaming for me will always be backlog, cheap sales, emulators, stuff like
Right.
that.
That's all fit well and good. That's all fair. That's
Yeah.
the beauty of the PC is that it's so flexible, and it's also console is a much more affordable gaming
Yeah.
entry point. So like that's a giant part of it too.
Hmm.
I've reached the point where like I just prefer the mouse and keyboard input. So
Hmm.
that's a big part of it, especially because I play so many
Well,
shooters.
don't both consoles
It's
support mouse and keyboard at this point?
It depends on the game. It
Mm.
depends on the developer. So like I play so much Destiny that I can't play Destiny on Xbox with a mouse and keyboard. Bungie does not allow it
Mm.
because of the PvP scene. But that's neither here nor there. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but whatever. Um, so I started gaming on PC because I wanted to get the better performance out of Destiny while still using mouse and keyboard, and that was my way to do it. And ever since then, I've just been getting deeper and deeper into the PC ecosystem. That's really the only thing I game on now.
Mm.
So unless it like
Like,
we play Gears 5 Horde, I'll play that on Xbox because the Gears 5 is like a chunkier game, so it's just easier for me to use the space on my Xbox than it is on the one SSD that I have in my computer.
yeah.
Um, I kind of juggle with that a little bit, but I don't have a reason personally to buy a Xbox or a PlayStation. Like especially like let's I'm looking at my Steam library. You ever hear of the game Mullet Mad Jack?
Yeah.
Okay, so like you can't get that on console. I played the demo. I'm probably gonna buy it for like $15. It's an awesome game. I'll play it
Mm.
for like a dozen or so hours. I can't get that on either console. Like there's a bunch of games on
Hmm.
Steam that are just not available on any
Well,
console, and like
yeah,
that's another big
that's
part of it for me.
no, yeah, that's a huge part of it, just for the fact that like for when it comes to the PC, like even traditionally, like if you go back to like how PC gaming kind of kicked off and how it started, it was literally like you would make a game and you'd make multiple copies and like you would like you would make floppy disks of like the first level and you would give them away at like game stores, and then
Yeah.
like it was a very open even now it still is. Like a lot of it's been consolidated to Steam, but there's still websites you can go to where you could literally just put it out yourself on an exe, if you really wanted to do it that way. It's a bit harder with sales because that's you basically open yourself up to piracy, and while it's not as big a deal as devs make it out to be, it could potentially hurt like smaller devs. But my point is like if I make a game, I could immediately just put it out on the PC and I wouldn't have to deal with like Microsoft or Sony. In some cases it's easier not to. That's why I'm saying
Mhm.
like ultimately, while I'm not like there's no possible way short of Xbox side loading Steam that they catch up in that manner, which that would be something fucking ridiculous. But like the
Yeah.
but basically like it shouldn't need to be that way. There should be an incentive to
Right.
own one or
Right.
both, you
I
know?
know, but I'm just saying that the incentive doesn't exist right now.
No, that I'm
Like
agreeing with
I'm
you. That
somebody
that
that's okay
yeah.
with yeah, no, I know. I'm somebody that's
No, I
okay with
agree.
waiting for a certain game to hit Steam that like I'm not gonna go out of my way to spend $500 on a PlayStation
Mhm.
if I just have to wait like a year or something. And I have other
Yeah.
games in between now and then to pad out the time to
Yeah.
like it's not like I'm just
And
waiting for that, you know?
like here's the thing, that's not an uncommon sentiment. Like
I
most
know.
people like
Yeah.
that's where I've been for a long time. It's like I don't need necessarily the latest game at the fullest price because like there's a backlog, and like you're reaching that point with just Steam alone. Like imagine if you wanted to go back and play older games through emulation or anything like that. Like you would have so much shit to play. Like it's just
I know.
that's part of the reason why I like I'm not a huge PC gamer. I mainly use it for legacy titles and things that you just can't get on the console. Like my most played games on the PC are games that like I played when they were new on consoles, like the Resident Evil games or Marvel vs. Capcom or the older Guilty Gear titles or all the different fighting games. Is like I played the shit out of them when they were new on consoles. I did all the rank stuff. I played with others. And now that I'm going back to them, it's just easier to go back on the PC, even with backwards compatible initiatives on the Xbox. It's just easier that way for me. It's like when games retire, they go to the PC. You know,
Yeah.
like that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. It's
But yeah, to go back to what you said, Microsoft. I mean, we're putting a lot of talk on Microsoft because they've just been in a bad way
fucking
for a
up
while,
lately.
and it's been a bad month for them. Even though Sony
Yeah.
has their own shit going on with now that they're on the PC, they want their own requirements. They want a bigger piece of the pie. But it's bad overall for all companies that
They had a
aren't
full
Nintendo.
blown mutiny on their hands.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's only listen. They're not gonna stop wherever possible because
Well, now that they bent the knee, it's like now people know that they have that kind of influence over a major
Yeah.
company, and if you don't want to sign in with a PSN, then just make a loud enough racket and review bomb their game into oblivion, and they might actually bend the like they might actually do what you want.
We'll see what
So
happens with that, but it shouldn't be constant these companies constantly on the back foot or fighting for PC scraps or fighting with their audience. It's like I think one of the things that both these companies are going to need to learn is that they, it's like it's like the worst parts of the government. It's like you need to realize like who you're really working for in the end. You can't keep picking fights with your consumer base. You can't keep just like giving them promises and never following up on them. It's like make the consoles, make the games, just do it already. Like Jesus, it's like Microsoft can't get anything out with all their studios. Sony uprooted their entire system and moved it across, and it's just a movie game machine now. It's like they both have so many problems that they could fix. Like it shouldn't take people begging for a video game crash for these issues to get sorted out, but that's where we're at.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else.
You didn't have. I thought you said you had one more thing.
Did I? Oh yeah. Okay. Yes, you're right. It's not like huge or anything, but the there was a investors call for EA recently. Then they were talking about you know where I'm going with this.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, they were talking about like how Battlefield 2042 really did not live up to expectations. I mean, they were able to put out a lot of content, kind of turn things around, but not really. Like if you have a disastrous launch, it's really tough to come back from that. But he said, and I quote, that the next Battlefield is looking to be another tremendous live service. And I hear that, and I'm just like, fuck off, dude. Like enough. I don't even know what to say anymore. It's just crazy.
I mean, that's and it kind of like circles back to everything we've been talking about.
I know
about today, because it's a matter of like they're looking to maximize profits. They're looking to, invest more in order to make experiences that they can get more money from, not necessarily that they're better. I doubt they're going to learn too much because it's been 2 battlefields of putting the different developers in charge that just love to pick fights with their audience, love to like shit on, the legacy of the franchise. We had an episode where we talked a bunch about Battlefield 5 and 2042. And what I'll say is, like, to go back to some of the things I say where it's like, I talked about before, the Xbox One failing kind of killed a lot of prospects for the console. Live service, the way that it's being bungled right now is so infuriating to me because it's going to poison the well for both sides, and it's just some of the things that could come from live service that are going to be good are like those prospects are just going to be gone at a certain point because of how consumers are just so hateful towards it now, and how as soon as corporations finally figure out that live service just isn't sustainable, like that time is kind of come and gone for like the lightning to strike for them. It's going to crush a lot of things, because I've used Call of Duty as a good model before, and you mentioned you said to me verbatim, you're just like, oh, we can agree that Call of Duty's a live service game. That's what you said to me. Yeah. And I said, yeah, I can agree. And I think, despite the fact that Call of Duty is sent out to die year over year, I think their content strategy is somewhat sound, where all the gameplay shit is free. They make a lot of their money back on ridiculously overpriced microtransactions, but from a gameplay standpoint, it's phenomenal for the players. And I think that, so when you have EA, which is one of the worst companies in existence, saying that they're gearing up for a live service game, it's just going to chip away more and more. Like, it's going to be a big live service game for them, I'm sure. Like, I'm sure they're going to charge quite a bit. I'm sure the content's going to be lackluster or lacking or just not enough. It's like, imagine if, they kind of were. Imagine if Halo Infinite this entire time was like doing, it's the same amount of content, but they were doing every 2 months, they were doing like a $25 buy-in for battle passes, like they had battle passes for sure. They had a store, but imagine that, like, that's the kind of stuff I'm expecting from like a Battlefield that's going to be the biggest live service thing they've ever done. Yeah. And it kind of, I think we're heading towards a pretty dark place when it comes to game support, because if companies give up on live service and, consumers give up on live, they already have. It's just like, how do you handle expanded content post-launch at that point? Because nobody does all like the traditional stuff anymore. The only reason you're getting content is because companies and investors can milk more money out of you. So it's like, what's going to happen after that, I wonder.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I saw a video, and you saw me rant about this, so I know you saw, or at least heard me talking about the video. There was a guy who this guy was ranting about DLC. Specifically, he was ranting about fighting game DLC, but this can be applied to all of the genres and all the different games. He had a few complaints, but he was essentially moaning about base roster size and characters that should be on the base roster but are sold later. And it's a little bit of a tangent, but like, I'm looking back at the history of DLC content, or it's more accurate to say that when this guy made this rant, I kind of looked back at the history of downloadable content, because basically you had it like this. People bitched for years about games getting expansions where everything was delivered at once. They bitched about it. They're like, oh, it's cut content. Oh, it's way too expensive, blah, 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 blah. And then they bitched when games did regular DLC packs, and because like, oh, everything's cut content, or oh, it's way too much money, or oh, by the time you're done with it, you're paying more than double the amount for the game. And now that and what that's kind of led us to is this live service point where everything's spaced out over a year. And the reason they do this is it's a mix of incompetency, esports focuses, maximum engagement timing, avoiding cut content allegations, and people are so stressed and pushed to the point that they want to circle back and they want traditional DLC expansions again. Like, there's no winning, because you have you'll always have corporations playing catch up. You'll always have consumers bitching. There are very, very simple and easy ways for for expansions, DLC packs, or live service to work. But the first thing that everybody needs to realize is it's not one size fits all. They're trying to make it one size fits all on both ends. Consumers just want whatever's convenient for them at the time to apply to every game that they play, and corporations at the top say, well, which one of these three is making us the most money? That's what we'll go with. And it's just, we need to get expanded content back to the point where it's in the control of the developers. And then when the developers fall short, we need to put the pressure on them, because there's a lot of stuff I agree on where it's like, we shouldn't be cutting content and selling it later unless it wasn't complete in time. Live service things can't be as expensive or time expensive as they are, expansions can't be, if you're going to charge full price for an expansion, they can't be, as small as a DLC pack. There's a lot of hurdles to cross, but like, we are so far from fixing that issue on an industry-wide scale because the misalignment between corporate interests and consumer mindsets. It's just not possible. And I think it's mostly going to affect shooters and fighting games. Shooters are going to be like, every shooter is going to chase live service until that like breaks people. Like until live service just does not work for everybody for consistent releases. Maybe Battlefield will be the one to do it. Who the hell knows? But until live service just shits the bed, it's just going to be a miserable, near slave-like thing. And for fighting games are kind of just reaching that point where they're spacing their content out. Like, seasons are now lasting full years or like 8 months at a time. Like,
that's crazy.
Street Fighter only put out 4 characters over the course of a year. Tekken's only putting out 4 characters over the course of a year. Guilty Gear only puts out a fighter every like 3 to 4 months. It's not sustainable for like good games and them holding up. It's I don't know. It's not tenable anywhere. The only expansions that are good are like Age of Empires occasionally does expansions still, and I'm like, it kind of works. I don't know. Basically, that whole long-winded rant, all I gotta get down to is like, DLC post-launch content is miserable in nearly every area, and it's because it's like a bunch of gears that just don't fit together when it comes to mindsets, experiences, and all that stuff. Like, I think Call of Duty, for all of its hurdles, is like the closest one to doing live service right, and the only reason they're able to get away with that is because they are charging ridiculous sums for optional content in the biggest pool of players in the market, and they have one of the largest teams available of alternating developers. And it's just like, you can do DLC on a small scale, but it's just not the way that this industry is set up right now. I think maybe when AA gets situated, maybe they'll like lead the charge to sustainable DLC content. Only time will tell, because right now we're just trying to right the ship for like games as a whole. Like, how are we supposed to, tackle DLC content?
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's going to be an interesting couple of years, because eventually that bubble is going to burst and people are going to get fed up enough. And it's just, charging half the price of a game for one skin is fucking ludicrous.
Yeah, but what I will say is, like, as we temper down and figure, like, even if we do address it as an industry, because I think it might just be like a game of hot potato as far as like who pays the cost in the end. I've said before, I think optimally is you have reasonably priced or completely free additional gameplay content, and then the bill is footed by optional cosmetics and things like that don't matter.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as in like it has to be done this way, because you can realistically make post-launch content without charging the prices that they have been. Like, it can be done. We need to like kind of wean backwards. Like, there's no way to do it overnight unless some brave studio just comes out in AA and just shows everybody up and like.
Well, that's what Helldivers did.
No, like, I get that, but like, what I mean to say is, like, you would need that to happen in multiple genres, showing that multiple different ways can work. Because it was like,
I mean,
you would need to have
it
you would need
once, I guess.
No, but yeah, what I'm saying is like you need Helldivers to come out and do what they're doing with live service, where it's fairly reasonable and you can earn the content. You need somebody to make a fighting game and say and put out reasonably priced DLC characters on top of an already strong roster, and the DLC characters are coming out on a monthly basis. You know, it's just it's not it's something you need to see happen across the industry in different genres. Otherwise, it's not going to stick. Yeah. That's all I gotta say, because I kind of just like had this moment where like I'm thinking to myself like, holy shit, fighting game DLC is so fucked. It's one day I'll explain it to you in detail, but like holy shit, it's so like I described how a lot of the big and like the current circuit of fighting games have it. There's a game came out the other day, like a smaller fighting game, and they announced their DLC plans, and it's just like, okay, so if you buy the game in this early access period, we'll give you the first 3 DLC characters free. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a great thing. First character will come out next month, and then the second character will be out in 9 months. I'm like, what the fuck? What are you doing? And that's like, they're only going to do 3 characters, and it's like sporadic over the course of a year and a half. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? It's like, I don't know. I guess be thankful you're not into fighting games, because it's a fucking miserable thing, unless you like the old stuff like I do.
Yeah. I don't. That was some rant. I don't know. I got nothing to say right now.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot. I mean, unless you got something else in your pocket. I managed to clip in the few notes that I managed to salvage. So I've said all that I need to say personally.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about everything that I wanted to talk about. So I think that does it. It's another grim ending.
No, it's not. Like, I think things are getting better in all walks of life. It's just it's a matter, like, the current position we're in is not tenable. I think whatever happens afterwards will be better for everybody involved. Right. As far as the people that like the industry, like, you know, I'm not saying like, you know, all the people jamming us up in the shareholder area and the corporate, they probably won't be too happy, but like I think the industry and the medium will be fine in the long run. It's just we got to get, however we're doing it and whatever way we're getting through it needs to happen sooner rather than later. And then I'll stop ranting once a week and we can talk about nice things more often.
All right. Well, on that note, that was episode 8 of the Pregame Network podcast. Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening, who is listening. And we will see you next week at some point.
Maybe Joe will show up.
Yeah, hopefully Joe will be here. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.